Over the coming months, the people of Northern Ireland are being asked their views on the proposed Bill of Rights. What will it contain? What difference will it make? What, in fact, is a Bill of Rights? Where, for instance, do rights and responsibilities come into play in a situation like this? When an elderly or disabled person's rights come up against someone else's responsibilities. And no doubt there are those who feel that more emphasis should be directed towards responsibilities rather than more rights.
Would you not think, we do have human rights, but people aren't aware, and they're not aware of, where to go to have, the remedy solved or whatever. I think that is a big part of it, that people living in these areas are not aware of what their human rights are. Yeah. People are marginalised, and I think when you're contained within an area, you become more and more isolated.
People living in this community, for example, will not walk past the markets because of fear. Mm-hmm. It's like an invisible force line in Star Trek. People will not walk past this invisible line.
It is, and Leanne spoke earlier about the youth facilities, the fact that there are no youth facilities, so to speak of, dedicated youth facilities in Donegall Pass. We can't take the young people to the markets or to Lower Ormer, realistically.
The worst thing we have in the area at the minute, we do not have a youth leader as such, a qualified youth leader. Youth provision is non-existent.
It's nice to live, but it could be more to do. Could be more to do for young people. It's not something that you have loads to do every day. No, I don't really know nothing about the Bill of Rights. Don't really understand it.
Do you think any of the young folk around here your age do?
No.
There's lots of children around here who they're lost really because they've nowhere to do, no structured play, and they're really suffering, because they don't have the structured play outside school, and they're not achieving perhaps what they should have. There's a need for after schools provision.
Something like 40% of youth leave school, certainly in this particular locality, without any qualifications whatsoever, which is, to me, a condemnation of the educational system and how it's currently run.
Developers are coming into this area where traditionally they wouldn't have invested. They want to make a quick buck, and it's communities that are suffering. The communities have very little right when it comes to actually opposing planning applications. We can write as many letters as we want, but we really don't get much of a say. No. We've got an 8-storey apartment and office block being built out the back. We all objected to it. We were ignored. We have no right of appeal. Whereas if that developer had been turned down, they would have had a right to appeal. We don't have that right.
When you look at Donegall Pass and what they had, now they had 13 pubs. They had 12 wee corner shops. They had, I think, 6 butchers and 5 home bakeries, 2 doctor's surgeries, a funeral parlour, although everybody likes to put that to one side, they're not actually campaigning for that, but we did have it.
There are rising incidents of antisocial behaviour, which particularly affects vulnerable people like the elderly, who perhaps get more annoyed at simple things that the kids might not mean to annoy people, but maybe kicking a ball at a certain time of night isn't appropriate, but they don't have anything else to do, they don't have anywhere else to go. So it's kind of finding the balance between the rights of the elderly people or the vulnerable people or the residents just generally to peace, but also the children to play.
One of the things that the senior citizens do miss is foot patrols by the police, and they would like to see it in a more regular occurrence.
Give them, hopefully, housing for the young people of this area, encouraging them to stay, to get married, to bring up families, to keep the area alive.
Nothing is really properly enforced or monitored, and this is the problem. You can have all the policies and all the human rights that you wish to have, but unless somebody's actually monitoring these and enforcing them, they're not worth the paper they're written on.
Well, you haven't any medical care available in the Donegall Pass as such. There's no doctors here, and yet in Beal there used to be 2 doctors' surgeries.
There's huge inefficiencies. Areas like this have major problems when it comes to health. We have higher infant mortality, we have people dying younger, we have more cases of cancer. These sort of deprived areas really are suffering. Now, there needs to be something done to address that. And I generally think some people are quite nervous of contacting government because if you're applying for something, there's maybe forms to be filled out, and some people actually struggle with things like that, and accessing information and their rights and things that they're actually entitled to can be quite difficult for some people, and yeah, they would be at a disadvantage really.
I think it goes deeper. I think we're still, or my generation anyway, is instilled with this Protestant work ethic where you didn't accept, it was difficult to accept hand-me-outs, those of us who are probably old enough to remember Harold Wilson calling the people here spongers, and the uproar that caused because of the Protestant work ethic. We don't sponge, we work for everything. And I think there's still an element of that.
This community is so close to the city centre and so close to the Golden Mile, but I think at the moment all we get are the negatives of being close to the city centre: the parking, the traffic. Local people aren't employed in the gasworks, they're not really employed in the city centre, they're not employed down the Golden Mile. So really we're getting the negatives and none of the positives. I would want to see the community benefiting from its position right in the heart of the city centre. Just a growth of the community spirit that's there, more people becoming involved in the community. You know, we've seen an element of that. We've got a number of groups going. We've got a new women's group, which I think is always a good idea because the women are quite good at getting things done.
It is a nice place, and even through all our problems that over the years, you know, it has been an area that's easily identified to live in, and everybody knows everybody else, and there is still that neighbourliness of which other areas is lost.